Hi, welcome to episode 25 of My Honest Truth. Today I'm going to talk to you about different things for about 11 minutes, and then I'm going to play a video from InfoWars that's about 11 minutes long. It's relevant to some stuff I've already talked about on this series. Today's topic, interdimensional lemurs, and how they break the cycle of running off cosmic cliffs. Just kidding. So, at my website, author Alan Holman's Microcosm, you can find several stories that I've written, a couple of which are multi episodic and quite long. So I'd like to talk to you today about writing. In 3 different years, I have won first, second, and third prizes in a local stage playwriting contest. So therefore, it's logical that I can teach you a thing or two about writing. In all the stories on my website, about 7 of the characters are gay. I'm not gay, but in this day and age, it's important to include some gay characters in your stories. In my story called Brian's Path, there is a character named Anton Lace who has heterosexual experiences, but he appears in my story called The Professor, which takes place when he's slightly older, and by the time that story takes place, he has realized that he's gay. A joke he says about gay people in The Professor is not homophobic because he himself is gay when he says that joke. In my story called Banana Chan, there's a character named Ashana Nico who is a gay teenage girl. She is a friend of the main character and she has a crush on the main character, but they remain friends. In my story, The Adventures of Ahu Cares, there are 2 pairs of gay characters. In a fiction script, a pair of characters is called a dyad. In that script, one of the gay dyads is a pair of talking cats, and the other gay dyad is a pair of friends of the main character. One thing I've learned about gay people in my life is that they are usually friendly. So if you include any characters in any stories you write, so if you include any gay characters in any stories that you write, it might be a good idea to make those characters into friendly people. My stories are usually grounded by a heterosexual relationship at the core of each story. In my script, The Adventures of Ahu Cares, the main character is a knight who loves a princess. In my series of scripts called Banana Chan, a guy named Rion loves a girl named Banana. And also in that series of scripts, a guy named Buster loves a girl named Mako. In my story, it's usually the guy who loves the girl and not the girl who loves the guy because, face it, I'm a guy and I know that guys are capable of feeling love, whereas it's it's very difficult to it's kind of mythical that a woman is the one who expresses love. Seriously. Um, I'm not really good at writing about the woman being the pursuer since I really don't have experience of a woman being the pursuer of me, but that's personal. Maybe I shouldn't get into personal stuff here. From my from my experience, it's up to the guy to be the pursuer, and yet there are many forms of troubles that a guy can get in for pursuing the woman who he feels the strongest about. It's like the natural order of how heterosexual relationships are supposed to play out due to natural causes are blocked from playing out that way just by the way society is currently set up. But that's a deep topic that can be its own show, maybe in the future. I'm talking about writing. When writing, a lot of writers will tell you that it's important that a character wants something, has a goal. But there are many interesting scenes that can be written about characters who are seemingly lacking in goals. Find out how to write those scenes, and although it might be difficult to pitch and sell those stories, you can write interesting stories that way anyway. In my series of scripts called Banana Chan, my main character named Banana has the goal of being left alone. She prefers to spend her time. Uh, she prefers I'm looking for. Oh, she prefers to spend her time alone watching anime, playing video games, reading books, writing, and drawing. However, the series rarely shows her doing those things which she prefers to do because she is often shown interacting with people since she is a pushover who is too polite to tell them that she wants to be left alone. Her goal of being left alone is really only spoken by her in the story when it comes to the parts where the character named Rion, who loves her, is trying to get closer to her. As the story goes on, she eventually does let Rion into her life. Since Rion loves her, it takes him a lot more work to be let into her life than it does a lot of other characters who don't feel as strongly about her. In my story called Brian's Path, the main character Brian wants to spend time with his friends and write stories. As the story progresses, there are times when he kind of alienates himself from his friends, even though he'd like to be spending time with them. Some weird and unusual stuff happens in that story, and parts of it can be quite a head trip. A lesson that can be learned from that story is the fact that as people mature, they get their own goals and their own places where they would rather be, and hanging out with the people who were your clique in high school becomes less possible as you become an adult. A lesson that can be learned from reading both Banana Chan and Brian's Path is that people with imperfect financial means cannot live the exact life which they dream for themselves. Stuff like that becomes apparent as one grows up, which is why I would like for those stories to be read by people who are around 15 years of age, because that's a time when people should begin to get exposed to those lessons, in my opinion. Anyway, in my story called The Professor, the main character, a professor, fails through the entire story to figure out how to get into a relationship with a woman named Gina who he likes. In my story called Kaninogen, there is a character who is an author of books about conspiracies, and his name is Paul, and Paul has a wife who he loves, and she loves him, but within the story she ends up dying of a sudden medical condition. If someone could explain women to me, I'd write stories wherein the relationships are more fulfilling for all involved. When I wrote my story called The Professor, I had a subscription to Time magazine, and I ripped some plot details from an article about a particular science. It's important to read if you are a writer. Well, that's all my talk about writing for now. One thing I hate about modern television sets is that you can't just turn it on and have something immediately playing. You have to set the input to a device, then go through whatever grids or menus that device provides before you can get to a show or to a channel. Sometimes I just want to turn on the TV and have anything at all already playing. You were able to do that back in the day when TV had an antenna picking up channels and a dial to turn channels. Back in the day, if you had the dial on a channel, if you turned the TV on, you'd immediately see what was on the channel that the dial was turned to. I live in a city where a digital antenna is nearly 100% useless, so I have to use a cable box and a Roku and an Android box. I'm apt at using those devices, but the requirement for devices such as those, which are more complicated than just turning on a TV and turning a channel dial, is why a lot of older and elderly people aren't watching TV anymore, even though they'd like to. I have a I have a neighbor who's a rather old man, and I talk to him sometimes, and he says that that's the reason why he doesn't really watch TV anymore. Time to switch gears. It's axiomatic that the mainstream accepted science of any given time period is always wrong. Time to switch gears. The following 10 truths become apparent with proper research. 9/11 was an inside job. Vaccines are bad and they do occasionally cause autism. Chemtrails are a thing that is real. The Earth is actually flat, and a major long-running propaganda campaign blankets us with a lot of false data about it being a globe. If you don't believe this, and you probably don't, ask me privately for resources about it, and I will send you links to a rabbit hole that can change your perspective if you consume the materials. Most pharmaceutical drugs are bad, and those few which are good should only be taken in emergency situations. Roughly 13 families on Earth have more reptilian genetics than most people. Those are the families who pull the strings behind most governments. The instructions for how to perform an actual cure for cancer which works is explained in a book I wrote that is free to read on my website. Just a second. I've been on alternative internet radio stations about a dozen times to talk about it, and many people worldwide have embraced it, but you'll never hear about it in any mainstream media outlet. I'll never be celebrated by any mainstream source for the years of work that went into compiling the information that is in that book. I'm aware that other books exist which contain information that is just as powerful, and you will equally never see an advertisement for any of those books in a mainstream source. Humans do not have any measurable effect on the overall temperature of the Earth. Universities are a cult which makes people stupid. Most data in scientific journals is not factual. There, that was my nearly 11 minutes of talking about stuff. Now I'd like to shoot it over to a video from InfoWars on a topic that is relevant to this series of videos. And now, InfoWars says that their videos are free to air, which I assume to mean that they can be included in YouTube videos. So that's my assumption, and so here's the video.
In the age of social media censorship, questioning whether or not the Earth is a globe has been deemed harmful thought. But why is this? We seem to be conditioned to think that the issue has been scientifically settled. But this is not the case. Our most popular scientists recognize that the geocentric model, where the Earth is at the center of the universe, is observably accurate. Edwin Hubble and Stephen Hawking went as far as to say that they reject the geocentric model not based on scientific reasoning, but rather because they find the thought of being at the center of the universe to be emotionally disturbing. Physicist George Ellis stated that you cannot disprove the geocentric model, you can only exclude it on philosophical grounds. The Michelson-Morley experiment in the 1880s proved the Earth was stationary, and Albert Einstein claimed this was a serious embarrassment and intended to disprove it with his relativity theory, but later admitted that he had failed to do so. We are conditioned to think that the heliocentric model is scientifically superior to the geocentric model, but when we apply scientific reasoning, we discover that this is not true. Contrary to popular thought, the scientific community has disputed the heliocentric model for centuries, such as the Earth's curvature. According to the heliocentric Earth model, the Earth is 24,000 miles in circumference, and if one were standing at sea level, they should only be able to see less than 3 miles before the surface of the Earth curves out of view. But this has been proven to be false for centuries, from the Bedford Level experiments of 1838 to modern photography. This photograph of Chicago was taken almost 60 miles away from Grand Mere State Park in Michigan. On a spherical Earth, this would be impossible. Using the Pythagorean theorem and the current dimensions of the Earth, the top of the tallest skyscraper should be 900 feet below the observable horizon. Local news explained this anomaly by claiming the image was a mirage.
And what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage.
They claimed that somehow light refraction and perfect weather conditions are responsible for creating a photorealistic mirage of the Chicago skyline appearing to sit on the flat horizon from almost 60 miles away. Anomalies in the Earth's curvature can also be found in old lighthouses, able to be seen for several miles past what is possible on the heliocentric model, and weapons guidance systems that are capable of sighting targets that would only be possible on a flat plane. We are accustomed to observing ships disappearing over the curve, but with modern consumer cameras, we can observe that this seems to be an optical illusion based on light reflection and the laws of perspective. Many of us tend to think the planet is too big to observe curvature, but the empirical evidence tells us that either the surface of the Earth is a flat plane, or the planet is at least 100 times bigger than we are told. Another very intriguing argument for flat earthers is Antarctica, the mysterious massive continent at our southern pole that nobody is allowed to explore. After sailing over 60,000 miles along the Antarctic coastline, Captain Cook was never able to complete the journey around the ice continent, which is supposed to be just under 12,000 miles around. Neither was James Clark Ross or the British ship Challenger. Nobody has ever successfully circumnavigated Antarctica. Many so-called flat earthers claim that these attempts failed because Antarctica is actually a massive ice barrier that surrounds the flat surface of the Earth. The azimuthal equidistant projection map, produced by the U.S. Geological Survey, has been used for centuries for the fact that all directions or azimuths are correct and all distances are at true scale. Studying this map, one can clearly see how man has been able to accurately circumnavigate the Earth on a flat plane model. And if it is in fact accurate, then it explains why after 60,000 miles, nobody has been able to completely circumnavigate Antarctica. Interestingly, this is also the map used by the United Nations. Admiral Richard Byrd, Medal of Honor winner, youngest admiral in the history of the Navy, and recipient of 3 ticker tape parades in his honor, led 4 expeditions to Antarctica. The 4th being a military operation known as Operation High Jump, with an aircraft carrier group, 4,700 men, 13 support ships, and 33 aircraft. Their stated mission was to establish the Antarctic Research Base Little America 4, but many believe the true nature of the secret mission was to root out the Nazis who arrived in 1939, claiming New Schwabia and setting up a Nazi presence in Antarctica. In 1954, Admiral Richard Byrd spoke on TV of an area bigger than the United States with valuable resources and announced a future of international exploration.
Our very distinguished guest for this evening is Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
Strangely enough, there is left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. We've found enough of coal within 180 miles of the South Pole in a great ridge of mountains that's not covered with snow, enough to supply the whole world for quite a while. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
That's a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do. So I'm willing to say to you that there will be a number of expeditions that will follow, I think, year after year, at the bottom of the world, because the government has really become interested.
But this never happened. In 1957, Admiral Byrd died in his sleep of a heart ailment at the age of 68. And on December 1st, 1959, all 12 countries active in Antarctica signed a United Nations treaty that outlawed all public travel south of the 60th southern parallel. This was the same time that NASA was formed. The world's attention was pulled away from exploring Antarctica and directed firmly on the moon. In 1962, a series of high-altitude nuclear tests was carried out by the United States. It was called Operation Fishbowl, which has caught the curiosity of many flat Earth researchers because the flat Earth model shared by the ancients was one where we lived within a sphere, upon a flat surface, and surrounded by a massive dome, like a fishbowl, or The Truman Show. In 2012, the secret lost diary of Admiral Richard E. Byrd was published, wherein Admiral Byrd allegedly claimed to enter a hollow Earth through a hole in the center of Antarctica and meet with an advanced alien civilization. The diary provides no evidence of being authentic, and many would suggest that it portrays the distinguished admiral as a crackpot and strange tales of Antarctica as fantasy. To this day, the public is strictly prohibited from traveling below the 60th southern parallel. Nobody has ever completely circumnavigated Antarctica, and airplanes are prohibited from flying over the icy continent. What are they hiding? There is now talk of investing trillions of dollars to explore Mars. Why not Antarctica? If sharing videos about flat Earth is harmful, why not put it all to rest by circumnavigating Antarctica, documenting everything, and prove that the Earth is a spinning globe? For Infowars.com, this is Greg Reese.
Infowars, tomorrow's news today.
It's Paul Joseph Watson with Summit.News and Action 7 News. We're here in Hong Kong.
This is Savannah Hernandez for Infowars.com. I'm reporting to you from Hong Kong, where I'm joined by reporter Greg Reese for the next week.
This is Greg Reese for Infowars.com in Hong Kong.
Our recent trip to Hong Kong was a new achievement for Infowars.com. Despite being the most banned broadcast in the free world, we continue to win because of our great, strong, loyal audience. We have Dan Lyman covering Infowars Europe, Paul Joseph Watson in the UK, Millie Weaver and Caitlin Bennett in the American heartland, and from Austin, Texas, a team of reporters and crew ready to be dispatched wherever the story is going down. We are not done winning, and with your support, we will keep winning.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com.
You have gone to InfoWarsStore.com and gotten books and films and supplements and T-shirts and water filtration, air filtration, and things you need.